Hi, friends and people that I don't know. My name's Tony Craig, and this is my dad, Burton Craig. And my dad is a civil rights lawyer in North Carolina for many years. And I grew up kind of talking to him at the dinner table about political issues in our state. And with the upcoming election, I just felt like it was kind of important to share him with more people. I don't want to keep it all to myself. So I'm going to sit here and ask my dad a few questions about this upcoming election, and I hope it really moves people to make a plan to vote, to encourage your friends to vote, because I think there's actually quite a lot at stake here that people don't really understand. So, Dad, just tell people like a little bit about your background in North Carolina, working in civil rights law and in the political system.
Right. Yes, well, I've been a civil rights lawyer for 40 years now. And what that means is the kind of case I've been involved in. I've done a lot of employment discrimination cases. I've represented women in sexual harassment cases. I've done racial discrimination cases, sex discrimination, cases representing employees. And then I've represented people who were wrongfully convicted on phony evidence, who have been in prison for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years for crimes they didn't commit. I've represented people who've been hurt or killed in police shootings that were unjustified. And I've been involved in representing people in voting rights cases, protecting the right of people to vote, and fighting against the extreme gerrymandering that we've had here in North Carolina. So those are the sort of cases I've worked on.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Tell us what's at stake here in the Supreme Court election. Tell people what's going on.
A lot. I've spent a lot of time in our courts and in our Supreme Court, and I've seen how important it is to have fair judges, and especially judges who understand the importance of our constitutional rights and equal justice, not just favoring the powerful, but also looking out for ordinary citizens. And so in any year, a year in which there's Supreme Court seats on the ballot, for me, that's very important, because I see the effect of what a difference it makes for the people I represent who sits on that court. But it's especially important this year, really more important than at any time in my life, because right now we have a court that it's got a 4-3 Democratic majority. And those Democratic judges are sensitive to the rights of individuals against abuses of government or corporations. But 2 of those Democratic seats are up for election this year. And if the Republicans win those 2 races, then the court flips from a 4-3 Democratic majority to a 5-2 Republican majority. And when that happens, not only are all the people I've represented over the years, are they in much worse shape, but all of you know that with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, that those issues about reproductive rights and freedom are thrown back to the states. So the only protection for those rights now is in the North Carolina Supreme Court. And so if these races are lost by the Democrats, then we are going to see a huge loss of rights that I know Tony and people of your generation have felt have just been guaranteed for your entire lives. And we're going to go back to 50, 60 years ago where people didn't have these rights.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so many people that I know were really upset in June, and I just think you can really easily miss a midterm election, but this is your action item right now, is going to vote about that. Um, and I think also at stake here is just further partisan gerrymandering, which would just make it much harder in upcoming elections to um, have fair representation in our legislature. And it just sort of creates a really big uphill battle for the future. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Right now, we've got a court that has said there are limits on partisan gerrymandering under our North Carolina Constitution. And and that is the only restriction there is on a legislature that can otherwise put itself in power forever. And if these two seats, Supreme Court races, go the wrong way, then voting rights are in great jeopardy. We'll see even more extreme gerrymandering. And this is really would be a calamity for our democracy. I grew up in North Carolina. I remember the 1950s. I remember where we had total segregation in this state. I remember when women had no expectations beyond a very narrow group of jobs that they could hold, where there was discrimination against women in terms of even owning property and entering into contracts. And of course, I remember when there was no right at all for to abortion. I remember the tremendous discrimination against Black people in our state. And so we've created a better world in a lot of ways. As difficult as things are now, there are many ways in which we've made enormous progress from where things were in the 1950s and 60s. And I think a lot of people who have come of age after that time take these things for granted. But right now, these rights that are we can't take them for granted. So let me talk a little more about these Supreme Court races. These races have been, for our courts, have been close, very close over the last 10 or 12 years. And just in the last election, there was an excellent judge, Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, who was trying to keep her seat as Chief Justice. She was the first Black woman ever to be Chief Justice of North Carolina Supreme Court. And she lost by 401 votes out of 5.4 million votes that were cast. That's like 0.00001% difference. And think about this. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. If five more people had voted for Sherry Beasley in each county, she would have won. And this year, it could be, that's the closest election in North Carolina history, but these elections are going to be close. And so I just think it's so important that people turn out to vote, and especially young people who it's just crucial. People of my age, we tend to we're used to voting. We vote every time. You can depend on that. But I think people who are younger maybe haven't fully understood the importance of turning out and what a difference it can make. So I'm hoping that, Tony, you and your friends and the whole network that you're connected with are going to vote, and they're going to vote for, on the Supreme Court, the two Democratic candidates, Lucy Inman and Sam Ervin IV. So important.
Yeah, just say a little bit about the Senate race as well, just to give people even more motivation to go out and vote, and what it would mean for North Carolina to swing our Senate seat Democratic this election.
Yeah, I mentioned Sherry Beasley, who was just an excellent judge on our Supreme Court, and someone that I've gotten to know and I admire enormously. And so she's running for U.S. Senate. The latest polls I've seen show that this is a tie with their Republican opponent, Ted Budd. We also have a tie in the U.S. Senate. There are 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, with Kamala Harris now having the tie-breaking vote. And so the whole power of the Senate is at stake here. And if Sherry Beasley wins, that means that the Democrats will have a majority in the Senate, and things that are so important to, I think, all of us are at stake here. Protection of the environment, protection of voting rights, right to abortion. And that's possible federal legislation for that. But just a fair economic system that looks out for everyone, not just the powerful corporations. So it's just, we have a great candidate in Sherry Beasley, someone who will be wonderful in Washington. And as I say, if we win that race, it'll have national implications. It's one of the key Senate races in the country. So again, we have an opportunity to make a difference by voting here.
Thanks. Yeah, I've just been realizing that there's a lot of really good reasons that people could have to not be paying attention to this election. Like, you're busy. It's just been an exhausting time politically for the past 6+ years. I get 1,000 emails trying to tell me to care about this and that and this and that and donate to this and that. But like, when it really comes down to it, all you got to do is spend an hour of your time, go vote for who my dad tells you to vote for. You don't have to think about it for one more minute. Just do it. It's like picking up the dog poop when you walk your dog, only like way more awesome. So yeah, don't stress about it. You don't have to research it. He's going to tell you who to vote for. Just show up. And if you're a little bit more motivated than that, like, please share this with your friends, email, social media, etc. And yeah, anything else you want to say, Dad?
Well, great. You said it just what I'd like to say. Yeah, like, I'm sure all of you, I've gotten all these emails from everybody around the country about contributing, giving money, and it sounds sort of hysterical. And I delete almost all of those myself. But there's one thing not to delete, which is vote. I mean, this doesn't cost anything. It is the power. It's the one thing we can do to play an important part in this democracy that's so important to preserve.
Thank you so much, Daddy. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Good night. Vote, everybody. Bye. Okay, stopping recording.